What's going on, everybody? Gentleman94 here. Welcome back to Ben Builds. Today we're going to start off with painting our bombs. That's kind of the first step we want to take here. Last episode we went ahead and painted the bottom of the 105 in the silver gray color by Vallejo, and today we're using this olive green by Tamiya to go ahead and get the bomb color set up, ready to go. I'm going to use my eyedropper and the mixing jar here and get ourselves a nice mixture going for the Tamiya color. I do like how Tamiya flows. Tamiya is just great paint. It's awesome. If I could paint everything in Tamiya, I would. But Tamiya doesn't have every single color that you would need for a model. They have the majority of them, but there are certain very specific colors that they just don't have. So in that respect, you have to go ahead and, mix your own custom colors. Where I've done that before, and I will still probably do it again, I would rather it just be in a bottle, But anyway, so we used about 1-to-1 ratio here, 1 part paint, 1 part thinner. You can use Tamiya without thinning it heavily. Seems like Vallejo you have to thin pretty heavily to go ahead and get it to flow right and not dry up in your nozzle. So we're going to be using these, I guess, some sort of surgical clamps. These are actually my grandmother's. She was a nurse through the 40s and 50s, and she had a whole bunch of these different tools and things that she was using for her hobbies. She was an artist herself, and so she kind of just reappropriated these to her own liking, and so I have reappropriated them to my liking as well. And I'm going to use them. I'm not going to lock them out because these do lock. I'm just going to go ahead and hold them to go ahead and get that steady. And then we're just going to airbrush the bombs, and we have a total of 6 bombs on the centerline pylon and 1 on each wing. So we actually have 8 bombs we're going to have to go ahead and airbrush. And yeah, the color covers nicely. I really like Tamiya paint. It's just so nice, so smooth. So 1 down, we have 7 more to go. Go ahead and do those off camera. We'll be right back. Okay, so the bombs are painted. Now we're going to have to mask off the bottom sections here of the 105 because we're going to be painting this. And this is the earth tan color that we have for the top coat. And yeah, you've noticed here I've got some masking done here with this, what is called blue tack. And it is just basically almost like a putty substance that you would roll out and you would just kind of stick along the side of the fuselage or tops of wings or whatever. And you could make it on any pattern or shape you want. And then you could press it down slightly and just airbrush right over it. I'm also going to use some paper towels, and we're going to wrap both landing gears in this paper towel with a little strip of blue tape to go ahead and secure them down so we protect them against overspray. And we also want to make sure that everything else is masked because overspray is a problem. We don't want to have to go back through and airbrush 5 or 6 times areas we've already airbrushed. So we want to go ahead and keep safe any area that we don't want covered in paint. Now let's go ahead and mix up some of this tan earth. When I was airbrushing the bottom silver gray color, I realized that I actually need to add more thinner than I thought I did. Vallejo seems to dry in the nozzle when you're painting it, so I'm going to probably put about 2 parts thinner to 1 part paint. That's kind of my idea here, and that should hopefully allow it to flow a little nicer and hopefully not clog up my airbrush. So we're just going to mix it up and see how this looks. It's actually looked pretty good. The next best test is to pour it in the airbrush and give it a couple test sprays. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. And yeah, it does seem a little thin, but I think it'll be alright. Better to be too thin than too thick, I suppose, because at least you can make multiple passes over really thin paint. Alright, so we're going to start on the right side of the aircraft, the only area I have masked so far. I don't have a lot of blue tack left. After a while, it starts to kind of break down and degrade, and what I have here is the last of it. So I need to go out and get some more because this stuff is just far too difficult to work with now. So I'm going to make some light passes here with about 15 psi on the airbrush and just very carefully go over the panel lines. I want to make sure that I cover everything, but I don't want to cover too much. I want to still have those pre-shade lines showing through. It's kind of the whole purpose of having pre-shade lines. Now, granted, I might end up losing some of the pre-shade by applying, the green and then the dark green on top of the brown in certain areas, but I'm more comfortable doing that than leaving sections that are going to be green or anything like that. So I'm going to do mostly the whole entire aircraft in the brown color, and then I'll come back and I'll have to do some post-shading. Post-shading is a little different than pre-shading, but it's along the same lines, along the same principles. You go ahead and after you paint, you darken the panel lines and you lighten the interior of the panel lines. And just kind of post-shading. Pre-shading, of course, is highlighting panel lines before you even start the paint. So the one half of the aircraft is done. It's time to jump on the left side of the aircraft. So we're going to go ahead and mask off using this blue painter's tape. And the blue tack is a little harder to work with because mine is fairly old. So we're going to use a slightly different technique to go ahead and to mask off the demarcation line between the brown and the gray. We're going to take this strip of blue tape and our hobby knife, and then we're just going to basically cut into the tape a nice meandering wave pattern. And 105s had very low demarcation lines between the brown-green color on the top and the light gray on the bottom. So we're going to run this pretty low here. Find a good spot, stick it down, and just tape it down. So we're back on the paint now. Everything is masked off, and we are ready to continue the other side of this. Let's talk a little bit about our paint choices here. I do like this color. This is a very nice brown color by Vallejo. It's known as Tan Earth, and it fits pretty well. I do like the shade of the color, and it actually goes on decently. I would have to say that I like Tamiya's paint a little bit more than Vallejo, but Vallejo's got a nice wide range of colors. That's one thing I think that Tamiya could do to improve, would be to release more colors, very specific colors. Tamiya seems to have a lot of your standard colors, but not a lot of specialty colors. You'll see sometimes on instruction manuals or paint guides, you'll see them call out for certain colors, and they'll have different lettering and different numbers for each brand of paint. You know, Vallejo is usually, say, like, for example, 893 or 765 or something like that. And Model Master is usually some sort of FS color. And then Tamiya is usually either XF and a number or X and a number. X is usually for gloss, and XF is usually for flat. In this kit here, they actually did not have any color to call out for certain Tamiya camouflage colors. So that's why I decided to go with Vallejo, because Vallejo had them all listed out. And Vallejo actually has a huge range of paint. Just under their one Vallejo name brand, they have their Panzer Ace color line, they have their Model Air color line, they have their regular, just standard, I guess, military color line, and they have even a gaming color line as well that was used for hand painting, say, tabletop gaming figures, or any sort of tabletop gaming type, you know, set piece that you would use. So they seem to kind of cater more to that market. But you can airbrush it, as I'm proving here. It just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of prep to make sure that you have the correct mixture. And like I said, I found that if you thin it a little bit more, it seems to help. Now, some of you guys who have used Vallejo paints, maybe you guys officially just use Vallejo paints, and that would be great. I'd love to get some tips on exactly what you guys do to go ahead and mix up your paint, because I had a heck of a time and just kind of fooling around with the paint. I've had a heck of a time getting it so it wouldn't clog my airbrush. Maybe some flow aid might help, something to kind of break up the surface tension of the paint. That might be a way to go as well. So we're just continuing to go ahead and just do light passes over the fuselage and over the wings with the brown color. I'm still at about 15 psi. I'm not too concerned about the nose cone or the tail cone, because those are going to be different colors as well. Nose cone is going to be black with a very thin strip of chrome, and then of course the tail cone is going to be kind of that burnt iron, steelish type metal color. So we're not too concerned about that. We are going to have to put on top of this, again, two different greens, a light green and a dark green. The light green is going to be more, I think, predominant on the aircraft than the dark green. The dark green will be for more of an accent. And here's the thing I've always wondered about Southeast Asia camouflage. It's always so different. There's no really uniform pattern, it seems like. 105s tend to have a lot of brown showing on one side of the fuselage nose, and the other side is really a lot of green. But even that, I'm pretty sure it can be different. I have one photo of this particular aircraft that I'm going to be decaling and building here, and it doesn't show anything more than a little bit of the wing and the front nose cone. It's actually the image that you see up on my title screen. That's one of the images that I use for the 105 build. It's actually taken from the back of a tanker when the aircraft was pulling up to, mid-air refuel. So, it's the only picture I have of this aircraft other than what other people have built. And so it's kind of difficult to know exactly how to draw out that camouflage pattern. One thing we will want to make note of here is that after this dries, we could come back in with some masks, and we could mask off the areas that we want to go ahead and have the green color. I'm not going to use masks. I'm actually going to try to do this freehand, because I don't think they use masks in the field. They just went up there, they slopped some paint on, most likely, put some of the lighter green, put some of the darker green on, and called it a day. I know originally the 105s were delivered to the theater in their natural metal, silver color. So you will see natural metal 105s flying around in Vietnam. They were then repainted with this 3-tone camouflage scheme. So I'm just kind of in it to just go ahead and freehand it. That's kind of my idea here. That way it would have a nice feathered effect between the different camouflage patterns. And also one thing I have heard of people doing is after they go ahead and paint up the aircraft in the 3-tone camouflage, they will take a mixture of something like, say, red-brown, and they will then go back over and they'll trace the demarcation line between the brown and the green. They'll actually trace it with a red-brown color. I might actually try that. I might do it on another, like a test subject, before I do it on the real thing, because that might be something kind of interesting to do. It might help to pop the camouflage a little bit more. We'll have to see. We're not quite there yet. We have to finish off this paint, finish off the top surface. Then we have to make sure this is dry before we do anything else with it. And at that point, I think it'll be pretty good. So we're going to be wrapping it up here, and we'll let this dry. And we'll come back next time. We'll go ahead and we'll hit up the camouflage. And that's going to be a little tough because these are again going to be Vallejo paint, but this time it's the Model Air line of colors. And I'm not even sure that these will work. We're going to have to see, because I really wanted to try Model Air. So that's going to be all for us today, guys. I hope you guys like the brown color. I think it looks pretty good, to be honest. Covered well. Needs a little work towards the bottom of that, but I think it's going to be all right. So I'm going to let it dry. I'm going to unmask it, remask it for the green, and we'll be back next time on Ben Builds. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.